Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark. I hope you're doing well. You may see that I'm basically wearing my robe because it's freezing here. Actually, it's really cold. And given the topic of today's essay, it's probably a good choice of attire. And yes, there is another essay today. I'm continuing with these essays. I'm going to force them on the BookTube community along with my cohort and dear friend Sean D. Standfast, who suggested today's reading. I was going to take it from the original book that it was published in, but I decided instead to take it from the book Modern Essays by Sir Christopher Morley, which is free on Project Gutenberg, so you should check it out. And the reason I've done that is because he includes a bit of information about the author of today's essay, and I thought that would be nice. So first off, we have Sir Christopher Morley's words, and then we will have the essay. So the essay is called Bed Books and Nightlights, and it's by H.M. Tomlinson. And Morley says, "I shall not forget with what a thrill of delight I came upon H.M. Tomlinson's Old Junk, the volume of essays from which this is borrowed. One feels, in stumbling upon such a book, much as some happy and astounded readers must have felt in 1878 when An Inland Voyage came out. It makes one wonder, submitting oneself to the moving music and magic of that prose, so simple and yet so subtle in its flavour, whether poetry is not, after all, an inferior or more mechanic form. The cool element of prose, that perfect phrase of Milton's, comes back to mind. How direct and satisfying a passage to the mind Mr. Tomlinson's paragraphs have. How they build and cumulate, how the sentences shift, turn and move in delicate loops and ridges under the blowing wind of thought, like the sand of the dunes that he describes in one essay, and through it all, as intangible but as real and beautifying as moonlight, there is the pervading brightness of a particular way of looking at the world, something for which we have no catchword, the illumination of a spirit at once humorous, melancholy, shrewd, lovely, and humane. Somehow, when one is caught in the web of that exquisite, considered prose, the awkward symbols of speech seem transparent. We come close to a man's mind." In Mr. Tomlinson's three books, The Sea in the Jungle, 1912, Old Junk, 1920, and London River, 1921, is revealed one of the most sincere and perfect workmen in contemporary prose. H. M. Tomlinson was born in 1873. Among his early memories, he records, "I was an office boy and a clerk among London's ships in the last days of the clippers, and I'm forced to recall some of the things, such as bookkeeping in a jam factory and stoking on a tramp steamer." He joined the staff of the London Morning Leader in 1904, which was later merged with the Daily News, and to this journal he was attached for several years. During the war, he was a correspondent in France. That would be the First World War, by the way. At the danger of incurring his anger, should he see this, I quote Mr. S.K. Ratcliffe on this phase of his work. "One who was the friend of all, a sweet and fine spirit, moving untouched amid the ruin and terror, expressing itself everywhere with perfect simplicity and at times with a shattering candour." In 1917 he became associate editor of the London Nation, where, if you are interested, you may find his initials almost weekly. So here we go. This is the essay. The rain flashed across the midnight window with a myriad feet. There was a groan in the outer darkness, the voice of all nameless dreads. The nervous candle flame shuddered by my bedside. The groaning rose to a shriek, and the little flame jumped in a panic and nearly left its white column. Out of the corners of the room swarmed the released shadows. Black spectres danced in ecstasy over my bed. I love fresh air, but I cannot allow it to slay the shining and delicate body of my little friend, the candle flame, the comrade who ventures with me into the solitudes beyond midnight. I shut the window. They talk of the candle power, of the electric bulb. What do they mean? It cannot have the faintest glimmer of the real power of my candle. It would be as right to express, in the same inverted and foolish comparison, the worth of those delicate sisters of the Pleiades, that pinch of stardust, the Pleiades, exquisitely remote in deepest night, in the profound where light all but fails, has not the power of a sulphur match, yet still apprehensive to the mind though tremulous, of the limit of vision, and sometimes even vanishing. It brings into distinction those distant and difficult hints, hidden far beyond our verified thoughts, which we rarely properly view. I should like to know of any great arc lamp which could do that. So the starlight candle for me. No other light follows so intimately an author's most ghostly suggestion. We sit, the candle and I, in the midst of the shades we are conquering, and sometimes look up from the lucent page to contemplate the dark hosts of the enemy with a smile before they overwhelm us. As they will, of course. Like me, the candle is mortal. It will burn out. As the bed book itself should be a sort of nightlight to assist its illumination, coarse lamps are useless. They would douse the book. The light for such a book must accord with it. It must be, like the book, a limited personal mellow, a companionable glow, the solitary taper beside the only worshipper in a sanctuary. That is why nothing can compare with the intimacy of candlelight for the bed book. It is a living heart, bright and warm, in central night, burning for us alone, holding the gaunt and towering shadows at bay. There the monstrous spectres stand in our midnight room, the advance guard of the darkness of the world, held off by our valiant little glim, but ready to flood instantly and founder us in original gloom. The wind moans without. Ancient evils are at large and wandering in torment. The rain shrieks across the window. For just a moment, the sentinel candle is shaken and burns blue with terror. The shadows leap out instantly. The little flame recovers and merely looks at its foe, the darkness, and back to its own place goes the old enemy of light and man. The candle for me, tiny, mortal, warm and brave, a golden lily on a silver stem. Almost any book does for a bed book, a woman once said to me. I nearly replied in a hurry that almost any woman would do for a wife, but that is not the way to bring people to conviction of sin. Her idea was that the bed book is sporific, and for that reason she even advocated the reading of political speeches. That would be a dissolute act. Certainly you would go to sleep, but in what frame of mind? You would enter into sleep with your eyes shut. It would be like dying, not only unshriven, but in the act of guilt. What book shall it shine upon? Think of Plato, or Dante, or Tolstoy, or a blue book for such an occasion. I cannot. They will not do. They are not good to me. I am not writing about you. I know those men I have named, the transcendent, the greater lights, but I am bound to confess at times they bore me. Though their feet are clay and on earth just as ours, their stellar brows are sometimes dim in remote clouds. For my part, they are too big for bedfellows. I cannot see myself, carrying my feeble and restricted glim, following, in pyjamas, the statuesque figure of the Florentine, where it stalks, aloof in its garb of austere pity, the sonorous deeps of Hades. Hades, not for me, not after midnight. Let those go who like it. As for the Russian, vast and disquieting, I refuse to leave all, including the blankets and the pillow, to follow him into the gelid tranquillity of the upper air, where even the colours are prismatic spicules of ice, to brood upon the erratic orbit of the poor mud ball below called Earth. I know it is my world also, but I cannot help that. It is too late, after a busy day and at that hour, to begin over time on fashioning a new and better planet out of cosmic dust. By breakfast time, nothing useful would have been accomplished. We should all be where we were the night before. The job is far too long, once the pillow is nicely set. For the truth is, there are times when we are too weary to remain attentive and thankful under the improving eye, kindly but severe, of the seers. There are times when we do not wish to be any better than we are. We do not wish to be elevated and improved. At midnight, away with such books. As for the literary pundits, the high priests of the temple of letters, It is interesting and helpful occasionally for an acolyte to swing them a good hard one with an incense burner and cut and run for a change to something outside the rubrics. Midnight is the time when one can recall with ribald delight the names of all the great works which every gentleman ought to have read, but which some of us have not. For there is almost as much clotted nonsense written about literature as there is about theology. There are few books which go with midnight. Solitude and a candle. It is much easier to say what does not please us than what is exactly right. The book must be, anyhow, something benedictory by a sinning fellow man. Cleverness would be repellent at such an hour. Cleverness, anyhow, is the level of mediocrity today. We are all too infernally clever. The first witty and perverse paradox blows out the candle. Only the sick in mind crave cleverness, as a morbid body turns to drink. The late candle throws its beams a great distance, and its rays make transparent much that seemed massy and important. The mind at rest beside that light, when the house is asleep, and the consequential affairs of the urgent world have diminished to their right proportions, because we see them distantly from another and a more tranquil place in the heavens, where duty, honour, witty arguments, controversial logic on great questions appear such as will leave hardly a trace of fossil in the indurated mud which presently will cover them. The mind then certainly smiles at cleverness. For though at that hour the body may be dog-tired, the mind is white and lucid, like that of a man from whom a fever has abated. It is bare of illusions. It has a sharp focus, small and star-like, as a clear and lonely flame left burning by the altar of a shrine from which all have gone but one. A book which approaches the light in the privacy of that place must come, as it were, with honest and open pages. I like Heine then, though. His mockery of the grave and great, in those sentences which are as brave as pennants in a breeze, is comfortable and sedative. One's own secret and awkward convictions never expressed because not lawful, and because it is hard to get words to bear them lightly, seem then to be heard aloud in the mild, easy, and confident diction of an immortal whose voice has the blitheness of one who has watched, amused, and irreverent the high gods in eager and secret debate on the best way to keep the guilt and trappings of the body on the body of the evil they have created. That first-rate explorer Gulliver is also fine in the light of the intimate candle. Have you read lately again his voyage to the Apologies. It's spelled Houyhnhnms. Houyhnhnms. Try it alone again in quiet. Swift knew all about our contemporary troubles. He has got it all down. Why was he called a misanthrope? Reading that last voyage of Gulliver in the select intimacy of midnight, I am forced to wonder, not at Swift's hatred of mankind, not at his satire of his fellows, not at the strange and terrible nature of this genius who thought that much of us, but how it is that after such a wise and sorrowful revealing of the things we insist on doing and our reasons for doing them, and what happens after we have done them, men do not change. It does seem impossible that society could remain unaltered after the surprise its appearance should have caused. As it saw its face in that ruthless mirror, we point instead to the fact that Swift lost his mind in the end. Well, that is not a matter for surprise. Such books, and France's Isle of Penguins, are not disturbing as bed books. They resolve one's agitated and outraged soul, relieving it with some free expression for the accusing and questioning thoughts engendered by the day's affairs, but they do not rest immediately to hand in the bookshelf by the bed. They depend on the kind of day one has had. Sterne is closer. One would rather be transported as far as possible from all the disturbances of earth's envelope of clouds, and Tristram Shandy is sure to be found in the sun. But best of all books for midnight are travel books. Once I was lost every night for months with Doughty in the Arabia Deserta. He's a craggy author, a long course of the ordinary facile stuff, such as one gets in the press every day, thinking it is English, sends one thoughtless and headlong among the bitter herbs and stark boulders of Doughty's burning and spacious expanse, only to get bewildered, and the shins broken, and a great fatigue at first, in a strange land of fierce sun, hunger glittering, spar ancient plutonic rock, and very Adam himself. But once you are acclimatized and know the language, it takes time. There is no more London after dark, till, a wanderer returned from a forgotten land, you emerge from the interior of Arabia on the Red Sea coast again, feeling as though you had lost touch with the world you used to know. And if that doesn't mean good writing, I know of no other test. Because once there was a father whose habit it was to read with his boys nightly some chapters of the Bible, and cordially they hated that habit of his. I have that book too, though I fear I have it for no reason. That he, the rigid old faithful, would be pleased to hear about it. He thought of the future when he read the Bible. I read it for the past. The familiar names, the familiar rhythm of its words, its wonderful, well-remembered stories of things long past. Like that of Esther, one of the best in English, the eloquent anger of the prophets for the people then who looked as though they were alive, but were really dead at heart. All is solace and home to me. And now I think of it, it is our home and solace that we want in a bed book. So there we go, everybody. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks to Sean for suggesting it. And I'll see you all again soon. Do take care. Bye-bye.